ideological crises of the intermediate classes. Sure, yeah. Okay. The totality of the crisis has given manifold forms to the counter-revolution. The most deadly and the most insidious, the most dangerous is the Stalinist counter-revolution because it springs from the proletariat and cloaks itself in Marxist terminology. The most obvious reactionary, the most easily recognizable, is the counter-revolution of the middle class. Because capitalism in its present state capitalism, faces them with complete liquidation and absorption into the proletariat. They purpose the complete destruction of capitalism and returned it to new medievalism based on natural inequalities. This is the program of the Christian humanist, militantly anti-rationalist, militarily anti-democratic. Like all forms of anti-rationalism, Christian humanism leans heavily upon the Hegelian dialect, the Hegelian concept of objective contradictions. The source of all dialectic is transformed into a subjective conflict in the individual between sin and salvation, between our individual imperfections and divine perfections. The crisis is moral, and the solution must be moral, faith in divine authority. The Christian humanist describes that with brutal accuracy and prophetic dread of fragmentation of the workers in large-scale production, and therein the threat to the very life of society. Nothing else could give them their crusading obsession that rationalism has reached its ultimate, the destruction of society itself. But the Christian humanist cannot see the proletarian solution. That is the hopeless dilemma out of which they have created a philosophy of complete regression to religious idealism. The Christian humanists have a systematic political economy. They propose decentralized self-governing corporations of private property with every worker in his place. They have a philosophy of history. They believe in the internal ambiguities of the human situation and the impossibility of ever obtaining human freedom on earth. They have a theory of politics. The natural and ideological elite must rule. The masses must not have absolute sovereignty. Since evil and imperfection are internal, they say the alternatives are either limited sovereignty or unmitigated authoritarianism. These are the philosophic values which have helped De Gasperi in Italy and the MRP, the de Gaulle in France, to rally around them. The desperate middle classes and an increasing numbers established universities, intellectuals in the United States are attracted to the same conceptions radiating from the University of Chicago. They are individual nuances among the Christian humanists, but as an all-embracing philosophy, Christian humanism prepares the middle class to resist to the end the proletarian revolution and to adapt themselves at a decisive movement of fascism. Of this, Renshinting in Germany has given equivalent testimonies. Hence, it is a useful weapon in the hands of big businesses and a diminishing magnates, so diminished today that more than ever they are dependent upon the middle classes for the mass base. In the United States, the Christian humanists, for example, Peter Drucker, will join with the labor bureaucracy to keep the mass of workers in their place at the base of the hierarchy of production. For the workers, Christian humanism is no problem. Their degradation in production goes far beyond the moral capacity for any individual to aggravate or alleviate. They attack the labor bureaucracy for precisely that for which the Christian humanists support it. However, for seducing intellectuals by the wholesale repudiation of rationalism and for attracting them to fascism, Christian humanism plays an important role in the war of ideologies. springing from the total crises of production today. The rationalism of the bourgeoisie has ended in the Stalinist one-party bureaucratic administrative state of a plan. In their repulsion from this rationalism and from the proletarian revolution, the middle class fall back upon the barbarism of fascism. The anti-Stalinist, anti-capitalist, petty bourgeois intellectuals themselves, the victims of absolute division between mental and physical labor, do not know where to go or what to do. Unable to base themselves completely upon the modern proletariat, they turn inward, pursuing a self-destructive, soul-searching analysis of their own isolation, alienation, and indecisions. They, too, appreciate the Hegelian dialectic, interpreting it as an unceasing conflict in the individuals between affirmation and negation, between deciding for and deciding against. Sorry, I have to appeal something. Yay. Okay. Hey, Mr. Kurt. Okay. These intellectuals are the most cultivated in the modern world, in the sense of knowing the whole past of human culture, having achieved what the idealism of Hegel poses as an absolute. They are undergoing a theoretical disintegration without parallel in human history. In France, this degeneration, the disintegration, has assumed the form of a literacy movement, essentialism. In America, it takes the form of a mania for psychoanalysis, reaching into all layers of society, but nowhere more than among the most urban, sensitive, and cultivated individuals. In Germany, the intellectuals cannot choose between Christian humanism and psychoanalysis. They're rather guilt or sickness in the root of the German catastrophe. This is total unreason. What?
Catastrophe?
Thank you. This is the total unreason. The disintegration of a society without values or perspective. The final climax to centuries of division of labor between the philosophers and the proletarians. Philosophy must become proletarian. There is no longer a pure philosophical answer to all this. These philosophical questions, and very profound they are, Marxism says can be solved only by the revolutionary action of the proletariat and the masses. There is and can be no other answer. As we have said, we do not propose to do right what the Stalinists have failed to do or do wrong. Progress in Russia says, oh my gosh, here we go. Zandandov is criticism and self-criticism. The state owns the property. Therefore, the proletariat must work and work and work. Proletarian revolution along with will put state property in its place. In the United States, the bourgeoisie extols all the advantages of democracy and bureaucracy, those of science. The proletarian revolution will put science in its place and establish complete democracy. The evils of Christian humanism sees the problem of alienation, of mechanized existence, the alienated essentialists, the alienated worker, internationalism, peace. All are ultimate problems and beyond the reach of the ideological solution. The revolution, the mass proletarian revolution, the creativity of the masses, everything being here. This is reason today. The great philosophical problems have bogged down in the mire of Heidegger, essentialism, psychoanalysis, or are rudely planned by the bureaucracies. They can be solved only in the revolutionary reason of the masses. It is what Lenin made into a universal, as early as 1905 revolution. The point is that it is precisely the revolutionary period that are distinguished from their greater wealth and greater intelligence, greater or more systematic activities, greater audacity and vividness of historical creativeness, compared with periods of I'm going to say it one time, Philistine cadet reformist progress. He drove home the position between bourgeois reasons and proletarian reason. But Mr. Blank Incorporated pictured it their other way about. They pass off poverty as historical creative wealth. They regard the inactivity of the suppressed, downtrodden masses as a triumph of the systematic activity of the bureaucrats and the bourgeoisie. They shout about the disappearance of sense and reason when the picking to pieces the parliamentary bills by all sorts of bureaucrats and liberal penny inliners gives way to a period of direct political activity by a common people who in their simple way directly and immediately destroy the organs of oppression of the people, seize power, appropriate for themselves what was considered to be the property of all sorts of plunderers of the people in the world. In a word, precisely then when the sense of reason of millions of downtrodden people is awakening, not only for reading books, but for action, for living human action, for historical creativeness. Selected Works, volume, that's Lenin, volume 8, page 261. That was the first Russian Revolution. In the second, the proletarian created the forms of its political and social rule. Now the whole development of the objective situation demands the full liberated historical creativeness of the masses, their sense of and reason, a new and higher organization of labor, new social ties, associated humanity. That is the solution to the problems of production and to the problems of philosophy. Philosophy must become proletarian. Yet, there is a philosophical task in itself, strictly philosophical. The doctrines of negativity and the whole system of Hegel, the specific doctrines of Marx, philosophical, political, economic, party, all are geared to precisely the situation, the impasse in every sphere, which only the proletarian revolution can solve. This is the task today, and politically and philosophically, you cannot separate it from production. The field is open. The proletariat, insofar as it is ready to listen, is willing to hear this. Organized schools of bourgeois thought are vulnerable from head to foot. In France, philosophers, historians, scientists, and writers are active protagonists and in heated debates over humanism. It is a total rationalism of Stalinism or Christian humanism or existentialism. Which of the three is heir to Hegel? Often, intellectuals turn towards Marx and Lenin and Hegel. They meet Stalinism, which spends incredible time, care, energy, and vigilance in holding Marx, Lenin within the bounds of their private property, state property philosophy. The Stalinists repeat interminably that dialectics is the transformation of quantity into quality, leaps, breaks in continuity, opposition to capitalism and socialism. It is a part and parcel of their determination to represent state property as revolutionary. In 1970, when the struggle in the working class movement was between reform and revolution, these conceptions may have been debatable. There we go. Today, all arguments fade into insignificance in face of an actuality. The crucial question today, which the Stalinists must avoid like the revolution, is how was the October Revolution transformed into its opposite, the Stalinist counter-revolution, and how is this counter-revolution in turn to be transformed into its opposite? This is the dialectical law which Lenin mastered between 1914 and 1917. The negation of the negation. the self-mobilization of the proletariat as the economic and political and politics of socialism. Stalinist bureaucracy is determined that not a hint of the revolutionary doctrines of Hegel, Marx, and Lenin should never go without its imprint, its interpretation. The social cooperativeness and unity of modern labor does not allow it any laxity from its cruel and merciless state capitalist need to make the workers work harder and harder. No hint of the revolutionary struggle against bureaucracy must come to workers or to questing intellectuals. Yet every strand of Marx's or Lenin's methodology, philosophy, political economy lead today directly to the destruction of bureaucracy as such. Some petty bourgeois professors and students, theoretically and in history, philosophy, and literature, are struggling through to a Marxist solution. The proletariat constantly tries to create itself as the state, i.e., no state at all. But Stalinism is a deadly enemy of both. It is the armed consciousness active counter-revolution. The proletariat, like every organism, must from itself and its condition develop its own antagonism and its own means of overcoming them. Stalinism is the decay of world capitalism and a state capitalism within the proletariat itself, and is in essence no more than an expression within the proletariat of the violent and insoluble tension of capitalism at the stage of state capitalism. One of the most urgent tasks is to trace the evolution of the counter-revolution within the revolution from liberalism through anarchism, social democracy, Noisky, counter-revolutionary, Menshevism, and to Stalinism. Its economic and social roots at each stage is its political manifestation, its contradictions and antagonism. Unless Stalinism is attacked at the most potent mode of counter-revolution, the counter-revolution of is grasped in all its implication, philosophical and methodological, then Stalinism and its method, its principles, its aim, can be dealt in a series of expanding blows against which it has no defense except slander and assassinations. Our document gives only a faint outline of the tremendous scope of the revolutionary attack on Stalinism, which the theory of state capitalism opens up. It is the very nature of our age which brings philosophy from Lenin's study in 1914 to the very forefront of the struggle for the remaking of the world. Now he's going to go into Trotskyism and give that thing off. Thank you for giving out coins. I appreciate that. Hey, someone, Yaz, I haven't seen you in a while. You're still here. Okay. Orthodox Trotskyism. For all this, the Fourth International has cut itself off by its state property theory. The philosophical roots of Trotsky makes mistakes is not new. It is not difficult when fully explained. Categories the forms established by the Proletarian Revolution in 1970 he took as permanent, fixed. The October Revolution had undoubtedly manifested itself most strikingly in opposition to bourgeois society by the abolition of private property and the institutions of planning in the sense of ability to direct capital. Trotsky drew the conclusion that this was the distinguishing mark of the Proletarian Revolution. The reformist bureaucracy was attached to private property, defense of the national state, slavishly served the bourgeoisie, capitulated to it in crises. He drew the conclusion that all labor bureaucracies in the future would do the same, more or less. The Revolutionary Party established state property and was defeatists towards the national state. Hence, only revolutionary parties could do the same. Trotsky did not recognize that although the October Revolution took these forms, the forms were not permanent. They were antagonisms within them, which would grow and develop with the class struggle, presenting the revolution in new modes. His philosophical method is known and clearly defined by Hegel, the method of synthetic cognition. Today, the reading of Lenin shows that he never at any time allowed himself to slip from seeing socialism as proletarian power, using all necessary and objective forms, but carefully distinguishing the fundamental universal of proletarian power from the concrete molds into which history had forced that specific revolution. For Lenin, the readiness of Russia for socialism was the appearance of the Soviet, a new form of social organization. Trotsky, however, did not see what took place between 1944 and today. He is not in any way responsible for the philosophical methods of Pablo and Germain. These are revisionists, that they claim they're revisionists. Pablo has simply substituted degeneration from the universal of proletarian power. This road is the road to ruin, whether by way of Stalinism or otherwise. Lenin's state and revolution is not a quote norm. It was the universal drawn from analysis of class struggle on the world scale and generalized. It was an indispensable necessity of thought by means in which Lenin could grasp the concrete reality of 1917. Thought is and must be a relations between the class, in our case the proletariat, the concrete conditions, Russia in 1917, and the universal. Without the universal of proletarian democracy, as Lenin pointed out, with the utmost emphasis in 1916 against the imperialist economists, the bourgeois crises produced inevitably a depression or suppression of human reasoning. There is only, quote, the effect of the horrible impressions and painful consequences. Lenin was not talking psychology. It was he insisted the method of thought which was at stake. In 1950, the universal is as far beyond 1917 and 1917 as 1917 was beyond the Paris Commune. A serious analysis of Stalinism will show that it is precisely the advanced, objective relations of society which compel the counter-revolution to assume this form and dress itself as Marxism. Fake action committees and all we have to draw a new universal, more concrete and embracing, more creative freedom of the masses, and even state and revolution. It is at this time that Pablo not only fails to do so, but repudiates state and revolution, proposing instead that proletarian politics be guided for centuries by the barbarous degradation in Russia and in the buffer states of Eastern Europe. It is the end of any philosophic method and the most serious of all theories of retrogression. In this mentality, can be seen the germs which, in maturity, makes the complete Stalinism absolutely hostility to capitalism, as we have known it, but a resigned acceptance that Marx and Lenin's ideal of proletarian power are utopian. No more deadly deviations have ever appeared in our moment. Germain has no philosophical method for which we can spare space and time. He bounces from side to side, affirming theories, dropping them, and building new ones, listing innumerable possibilities, analyzing not the laws of capitalism, but Outer Mongolia and the decrees of Mussolini, can't say it, in the north, northern Italy, gripped in that most terrible of all logics, the logic of empiricism, effective only in this important sense that, wow, 155, you scared me, that the undisciplined verbiage and shifting generalization prepared minds for some such brutal solutions as Pablo's. In a dark time, Trotskyism maintained the continuity and struggle for the essentials of Bolshevism. Its errors are not irreparable. Today it faces two roads, Pablo's road and the road of the Johnston Forest. The longer the hesitation, the greater the price that will be paid. August 4th, 1950. Glossary. Oh my God! Somebody just finished it. Did I just finish it? Holy crap. Hold on. No way. Yep. All right. So, I just finished it. That's amazing. Let me see here. There's one more. Now, we're going to read his selective works, I think. And in his selective works, you will see that he's a Trotsky. So we're going to read it.
Right.
He does stuff for a Trotsky newspaper. See if I can find the book.
I wanted to talk to you. It's really cool. Sorry, I'm eating my dessert. I was thinking, I made sure I remembered this, so let me try it again. I mentioned that one of the reasons he didn't become was because didn't have an answer for that question, and you said among many others, and I can't wait to learn the other ways as well.
Hold on a second, I'm looking for this. Looking for the other book that was, Sealer James's The Revolutionary Marxism. Hold on. Selected Works, 1934. Okay. 1934. Okay. No, it's not a short read. That I didn't know how close I was to finishing, so I didn't pay attention. Okay, C.R. James, Revolutionary Marxism.
Okay.
All right. This one's a little bit longer. Let me get the thing.